Welcome, as always, to Football Pass. And every Old Firm derby feels like it's the biggest thing in the world. Certainly the biggest thing in Scottish football. This one, if anything, is even bigger. Such anticipation. Both teams now in some kind of form. And two men to chew the fat who know all about these meetings in Terry Butcher and Charlie Nicholas. Fair to say, on either side of the perennial divide. Welcome both. Terry, talk to me about the blue half. How confident are you?
Well, quietly confident. I think that, as you say, they're in a good run of form, apart from that St Mirren hiccup in the League Cup. But they've bounced back with a lot of power. They're not playing brilliant, fluid football as they have done early in the season, but they're winning games and grinding out games, and that's a sign of possible champion. So Celtic have it all to do, and I don't go along with the fact that Rangers can draw the game and don't have to win the game, and as long as they don't lose the game, because Celtic have certainly got the bit between their teeth after a really ragged spell in the Scottish Premiership. So, they're hungry. They want to keep that title, and there's so much riding on the title this year that it's going to be whoever holds their nerve the longest and the strongest. Because every team that wins the title has to have the greatest character and the biggest bottle. So it's all a case of mental attitude now, as far as I'm concerned.
Charlie, we spoke before Christmas and you weren't uber positive then because Celtic weren't playing great stuff, but they have increasingly found their feet, haven't they?
Well, they've got a little bit of the mojo back. They had a good run of games. Last season's Scottish Cup final for the quadruple treble obviously came at a very important time for them to kind of get something going again, and they struggled in that final. But Terry touches on it, and I think Rangers were concerning me this time last year, and then we went into a kind of mini rest, and they never got going again in February, Rangers. But this Celtic team are hard to write off just simply because the mentality that they've had in previous years has been absolutely exceptional. So one thing I can honestly say about this team that you do get jealous of, because they find a route to get there. And they've always been fairly superior, but now that superiority is gone. And Rangers this season, to their credit, and Terry's bang on, recently not playing well. Morelos scores just the other day, and he's not been playing well. Ryan Kent, who I think is a star player in these occasions, has been playing okay. But mentally at the back, when you're strong at the back and you're confident at the back and you're protected well with the goalkeeper McGregor in there, then that gives you a big lift and a big confidence boost again. Celtic have to go for it. I'm a bit like Terry in that respect. I don't think Celtic have to force the game or have to go out and win it in the first 20 minutes. But Celtic have to play a front two with Griffiths and Edouard for me to try and upset Rangers' rhythm, because in the last 3-4 games, Rangers have controlled the football matches. Even when they haven't won, they've controlled the match. And Celtic tend to change their system to find the awkward Rangers to see if they can find a problem with it. So the only hope I've got as a Celtic fan, and its level has been going up in the last few weeks, that I think I can go there positive and saying I think we can upset back, but I'm not confident defensively for Celtic. That's the issue.
Terry, give us a bit of a flavour going back, obviously, to your days as a Rangers player, what the build-up would be like kind of inside the bubble. It gets hysterical looking outside to win, but what is like inside just before these big games?
Well, remember, I played when it was black and white football. It was a long time ago with the old firm, but it was certainly one where you were cocooned away if you could be. But when you've got family, when you've got friends, and everybody wants tickets, everybody wants to see the game, and obviously with the fan situation, it's a lot different now. But people are just so interested. Everything hangs on what you do, and particularly against Celtic. The same with the Celtic players. So you try and take your mind away somewhere else. You try and think about other things, but it always comes back to the old firm game. And Rangers have had good results against Celtic in the last couple of years. They've got to keep that going and make sure that they don't let things slip, because Charlie's right as well. What he says, Celtic they've got their mojo back a little bit. Any sniff of an opening, any sniff of Rangers dropping their standards next year. In particular, and making sure that Rangers win games and win whatever by whatever means. If they can do that, then they could win the title. But Celtic have to really go for it, and I think it would be. It's a classic game where I've been there many times as well. When you say you can't lose a game. Don't lose the game, win or draw. That's fine. That's a great result. But it's not like that. As Charlie knows, it's helter skelter. It's mayhem, even with no crowd or a fraction of the attendance. It's still mayhem. It's still the best club game in the world.
Yeah,
So
if you don't have
Charlie,
butterflies,
go on.
sorry, Matt, if you don't have butterflies and nerves going into this game, you shouldn't be involved in it because it's all part of it. Because if you're going to be a certain fear factor on probably the Monday or the Tuesday, and this week they had obviously games the other day, but for a couple of days you're nervous and you have your first probably fear thought that you can't lose. Whatever you do, don't lose, as Terry touched on. But then when you actually get there and the build up to it, you have to be totally positive. You have to be like the boxer who's saying, right, I'm going to go in there and this is what we're going to do. It has to be about you. You have to be zoned in. And everybody has to. But the most important thing about this fixture is that you actually have to be pretty selfish and then try and help your teammates. And it becomes a little bit ridiculous to say that because it's the team that will win this game, but it's individuals who can maybe make the difference. And people have told me in the past, you can dominate midfield and they'll win the game. That doesn't always mean it's guaranteed. It can be a mistake, it can be a refereeing decision, it can be a bit of great luck. So there's so many unpredictabilities about this game, and it's never about form. And sometimes it might just be about desire. Now, Rangers' desire is questioned because it hasn't been so far this season with 0 defeats in the league. But Celtic must try and upset that rhythm. They must try and get into the psyche that says we can create a problem or two in the first 10 minutes and then see where that leads to. But, I definitely feel that getting into this one, there's weaknesses in both sides, but Rangers have less of them. But so Celtic have got to do a little bit more to find something to get themselves into a strong position.
So would you have to calm players down, Terry, before a game? Would you almost be pulling them down from the ceiling, or because obviously you had a lot of English players in your side, would you have to kind of get across just how big this was?
I think it's very difficult to calm players before an Old Firm game, and normally with the crowd there, the crowd will get you up anyway. But I think it's the players' standards, their mentality about winning games, what they've done this season. You just got to keep on about that. What they did before against Celtic, winning at Celtic Park, and all these kind of things. It's ingrained in the players that they go out there and perform, crowd or no crowd. But I just think I've played in Old Firm games where we've been a goal down after a few seconds against Celtic at home, especially, and we've come back to win those games. So it's a ridiculous game in many aspects, and I mean ridiculous when I mean it's just crazy. It is. There's no common sense to it, no logic. You can't, you just have to get through it. And as Charlie says about being selfish, you've got to do your job well. And if you do your job well, and your other 10 teammates do their jobs well, then you should win the game. It all depends about mistakes. Yes, it all depends about being brave and all these kind of things. But it's a great game to play in, mentally as well as physically. So I wouldn't necessarily calm players down. I would always used to wind them up. But at the end of the day, everybody must be focused. That will be the last instructions going on the pitch for me, because everybody be focused on their jobs.
How big are the bragging rights in Glasgow, Charlie, if you get the right result?
Well, there's no middle ground in Glasgow. Even when you get a draw, if it was a draw like this weekend, then Rangers still have the bragging rights because they sit top of the table and they've got a nice gap. So you're either a winner or a loser. It's just the reality of it. It's, me and Terry have touched on. Sometimes you think you walk away and get a draw and you think that's not too bad. But that's only when the gap is close. Can you probably get away with that a little bit? We're touching on people who are way up there and over enthusiastic. I remember getting in before Terry came up to Glasgow in the early years, in my early 80s. And Davy Provan and Frank McGarvey were the best mates in the dressing room. And the two of them had a fist fight the day before the Rangers game, such was the intensity of the training, because everybody's real at it. And Frank was a kind of happy-go-lucky guy that didn't really think too much. And Davy was a kind of football intellect who was always concerned about something or other. So the tension gets there. And the following day going to the game, the two of them were the best chums, and it had calmed down again. So these things go there, but this is the beauty of this thing. It's just like, you say about Glasgow bragging rights, it does go further afield now. Everybody wants a
Yeah.
part of it. You've got Ireland, then you get into Europe, then you can go further afield than that, because this is so different with Celtic going for 10 and Rangers not saying they're trying to stop it, but in reality they are. So this is a different meaning altogether. You know, when Rangers were going for their 9, everybody was on about stopping them. When I was a kid and Jock Stein was going for 10, it was the exact same thing. And this is about it's more than a bragging rights this time, because if Rangers do win, well, it's theirs to fall apart.
Is it over, Terry, if Rangers get certainly all 3 points on Saturday?
No, definitely not. And I think any team would say that, because whenever we used to play Old Firm games and win them, the next game we would probably lose, whether that be against Motherwell or Hamilton or whoever it was, because you are so up for the Celtic game. You get so mentally prepared and sharp, and everything's focused. When you win it, everybody's on a high. You're on the highest of highs, and it's the lowest of lows when you lose. But everybody wants to pat you back and say how good you are and what a great game and all, etc., etc. And you get that all the week building up to the next game. And then what happens? You go into the next game thinking, well, we can beat this team 6 or 7-0 easy, no problems, because we're just beating Celtic. It doesn't happen like that in Scottish football, as we know. So you lose the next game, and then you've got to get back on track. So the 3 points you pick up against Celtic, you can easily lose in the next game if you're not mentally sharp and mentally right. So, you've got to be very cute and very careful and make sure that if you do win the game, then you continue the good form. Try and forget about the Celtic game and keep doing what you've been doing all season. But if you lose the game, the reverse is true. You've got to climb up a cliff to try and get back into any kind of good form.
Charlie, Celtic played a diamond, I think it's fair to say, in the win yesterday. Will they go for that again? It's quite quite an expansive style to play against those Rangers fullbacks.
It is, and it'll be risky, but I think Celtic probably have to take a risk. I mean, I think Turnbull's done excellent. You know, he finds pockets of space, but the problem that Celtic have in their choice is the defensive setup. And Rangers fullbacks we know are high, but it's not just the fact that they can get high. Their delivery is first class. It really is. It's dangerous, and they force you back just because you're worried about the service they can supply. So that is the biggest danger in here. But I'm saying that Edouard and Griffiths should play up front to try and give the problems to Rangers defensively. The problem they've got is that he left Turnbull out for the Scottish Cup final, and I think he's earned the right to be in the team. But I am also a fan of Christie. Christie finds space and pockets in areas. And of course, there'll be a big debate about whether he bring. I think personally he'll bring Scott Brown back. He has done really, really well, but he's got a problem because it really stems, in my opinion, the diamond, I think, should start definitely with Turnbull behind that. But who do you sack? The defensive setup, I think Julian looks as if he's kind of struggling, they're saying, but I've got a feeling that he might make it, because most defenders would probably say it's a bit of pain and it's a bit of swelling, but I'll strap it up, and if he feels okay, he should go for it. But it's Celtic's problem also is defensively, their fullback. So it's a key area. It's where Rangers have been strong against Celtic recently, and Celtic have got a big decision here. I'm glad it's Neil Lennon who's making that decision and not me.
Big decisions, and actually kind of nice headaches for Steven Gerrard, would you say, Terry, with Hadji obviously banging form, but then you've got Kent, who's been such an influential player in these previous couple of meetings. Morelos now suddenly finding his scoring boots roof. He's got lots of nice choices, hasn't he?
Yeah, he certainly has. He'll be full aware of Celtic's attacking prowess and what they've done to Rangers in the past. So he'll know all about Celtic, but it's all about your team as a manager. It's all about getting the best out of your team, and not so much about changing systems to combat Celtic. Rangers have played and went to Celtic Park and have beaten Celtic as well at Ibrox. So they've done it by playing their way, and their way is with the same set of players, being positive, going at people. It's good that Morelos has scored the other day, so he'll be looking to score against Celtic if he possibly can. But no, I think the players are hungry. I think they'll be up for it, and they've shown in this season already by being unbeaten so far that they have a lot of bottle and a lot of mental strength, and they're going to need all that when it comes to playing the game against Celtic. So yeah, it's a nice position for Steven Gerrard to be in. It's a nice position for Rangers to be in, but that's all it is. It's a position. It's not anything conclusive. They haven't won the title yet, and even winning on against Celtic, they're not certain of getting the title at all. So there's a lot up for grabs, but nothing's going to be decided.
Charlie, I take Terry's point absolutely, and he's been there and done it. But if you're not confident with a 19-point gap, when could you be?
Well, it's always been Celtic who said this big gap,
Yeah.
and then it was closed. It was closed this time last season when Rangers came to Celtic Park and won, and that was the first time they'd done that in such a long time. And mentally, you thought they would kick on, and I think that's where Terry's cautiousness comes from. That they've done it before, but they've not seen it through. Now the difference is they have a big gap. I know Celtic have 3 games in hand, but when you actually look at the fixtures, Aberdeen is always awkward for Rangers away, and they have them in January. So it's probably, as Terry's touched on, the next game after that, what's after this and what's after that. And they're already probably planning. I just see a difference in Rangers. It's exactly that. They don't have to change their style. Their style has worked. It made Celtic think and change. They went to a back 3 in the second half of last season because of the problems Rangers caused them. And yet they didn't meet Rangers again in the league because obviously they got shut down with the pandemic. So the really interesting thing will be how brave or how cautious Neil Lennon's going to be, because Gerrard, I think Arfield's out, I think Jack's probably going to be out, so I would suspect that maybe Aribo will play. So his system is already set, and the agenda for him doesn't change. It's Celtic's agenda that is going to be probably the deciding factor of whether Celtic can get back in this title race or whether Rangers can get to the point where said, I mean, I would hate to admit it if Rangers do win that the title is over, but you can't honestly ever give it up whether you're a Celtic guy or a Rangers guy until it's just impossible. And because of that reason, you aren't, because as we know, they can lose at Aberdeen and suddenly it's back to where it was before. But it would be Rangers to crash. They would need an almighty crash from Rangers if they do win this weekend.
And Terry, I won't ask you for a score prediction because obviously they're kind of, 10 a penny, but will we be having a live debate about where this title is going to end up in, let's say, 6 or 8 weeks' time? Do you still think we'll be having this conversation?
Well, yes. I mean, Rangers have shown, and even last season, that they can handle half the league program. They did all right first half, second half they didn't, and that's when champions do go on to clinch titles. They grind people out. They win. They're relentless when it comes to the final spurt, the final furlong, or whatever you want to call it. So Rangers haven't been there before for a long time. And Rangers now, the players are used to winning well in the first half, but they've got to see it all the way through. Celtic have to keep going, and the fans and the manager and everybody else will demand that they keep going. But Rangers, the manager and the fans will demand that Rangers keep going as well. So
Yeah.
there'll be no, they can't have any quiet times. There'll be nothing that they can go away and relax, because everybody will be onto them. And the more the season carries on, the more pressure is exerted, and it's whoever can handle that pressure. So we will be having this conversation, I think, in another 6 or 7 weeks. Yeah.
Perfect. I wish you both well for the weekend.
I need it.